Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Simply Trade Roundup. My name's Annik. I'll be your host today. And as usual, I have a guest with me. His name is Scott Sorenson. He is the CEO of SIDA Brokerage, which we will discuss a little bit more today because they have shared a blog post on LinkedIn and on their website about the current state of the tariffs and the Supreme Court ruling and what it means for duty drawback. And we're going to discuss the outcome, what it means, where this is going. We're in a limbo, but anywho, that is what we're going to discuss today. I know a lot of people are talking about it, but we hope to give you a little bit more information. So with no further ado, thank you so much, Scott, for being here and discussing this very important topic with us today.
Thanks, Annik. Excited to be here.
Great. I know. I'm sure you're having a busy day, busy weekend since Friday. I mean, a lot has happened. It's crazy. Why do these things happen on a Friday?
Yeah, just to torture us, I guess. But we're eager to be here and share with your listeners and with a lot of people who have a lot of questions out there. So we're
Right.
hoping that we can help answer some of those questions. There's still a lot of unknown, but we would love to help discuss next steps.
Right. So let's get down to the details. So what we know now is the Supreme Court held that the president went beyond his authority by using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, what we call IEEPA, to impose broad revenue-raising tariffs. We've seen the repercussions of that the entire past year. And we've seen businesses struggle. We've seen businesses go out of business. We also have seen businesses taking it to their advantage. I've heard both. But again, the court said tariffs are fundamentally a tax and that power belongs to Congress unless it clearly delegates it by statute. So we are here now. What was your initial thought on that once the Supreme Court said, this is unjust?
Yeah, initial thoughts, it was tough because going into it over the last several months, as we knew the Supreme Court was hearing this, it felt a little bit like a 50-50 jump ball where this could go either way. But ultimately, I think more than anything, some of it was the timing was a little surprising. A lot of us were expecting that we would hear something in December. When that time came and went and we didn't hear anything, we thought the next time we would hear it might be in later this spring. The timing kind of surprised us a little bit just coming out on a Friday, mid-February. But as far as the ruling, again, we felt like it could go either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people were not sure on it. You would see a lot on LinkedIn. There's a lot of chatter all the time. And so here we are now. They obviously said it's injustice. The president came back not loving the idea of it, obviously, because he was the one who put this in place. And if someone destroys what you put in place, that is not something that's going to make you happy. But unfortunately, that is the ruling and we have to accept. Though it was said that now, I'm not sure when this will get in place. I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm just kind of describing the situation, is that 15% on global trade, right? That's what he said, tariffs.
Yes, that's right.
I'm not sure exactly, but we can get to that later. That way we kind of go over what is now. So they obviously described this injustice. So what is now? Which tariffs introduced during Trump's second term have been impacted?
Yeah, so what this impacts are two different types of tariffs. The first ones that he implemented early in 2025 are often referred to as the drug trafficking tariffs. Those were initially imposed on Mexico, Canada, and China. Those were a 25% tariff that were based on this fentanyl emergency declaration that was put in place about a year ago. And then a few months later, on this Liberation Day, the Trump administration announced what they called the reciprocal tariffs, in which they, again, under the IEEPA powers, they said that this is an emergency, that we need to declare these tariffs. And those had a wide range, a minimum of 10%, but some of them going much higher than that based on a trade imbalance with some of these international trade partners. So the IEEPA ruling from the Supreme Court invalidated those two tariffs that were introduced last year, the reciprocals and the drug trafficking or fentanyl tariffs.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like there's buckets of tariffs. That's how they kind of describe. So you can put them into the bucket of the IEEPA bucket. That's obviously been knocked down. And then there's the 301, 232 buckets.
Right.
And, it's so funny. Because it's not just when we talk about tariffs, we see it as one and we're like, oh, yeah, they're just tariffs, but they're just different tariffs
Right.
still.
You're right. And it's interesting because the Section 232 and Section 301 tariffs were implemented by President Trump in his first term back in 2018, 2019 is when we saw those implemented. And those had about a 4-year period in which they would later be reviewed. That 4-year period came and went during the Biden administration. The Biden administration didn't do anything to take them away. And those tariffs, Section 232 and Section 301, are still in place. Those were not struck down by the Supreme Court last Friday.
Yeah. Okay. So still in place. Again, there's seems to be a lot unknown. We know that those tariffs have been knocked down. That's what the Supreme Court said, or ruled on. But Trump clearly says other things that we hear from him in the news, which is why there is so much confusion because, do we go with what the president is saying or do we do what the Supreme Court is saying? There's clearly no alignment in the government at the moment. So how do we move forward as a business? Because there's some things that we don't know yet. Are the tariffs gone for sure? Are we paying them? What would you say to an importer right now?
Yeah, good question. So a couple things. One, some of these unknowns that we can walk through maybe one at a time. One is how long until the IEEPA tariffs, which were struck down by the Supreme Court, until those are no longer being collected by customs, because there is a little bit of a transition period in which even over the weekend, they were still collecting tariffs on those. So we can talk a little bit about that. Another unknown at this point still is how do I get money back? Can I get money back from these tariffs which were struck down by the Supreme Court? Are those eligible for a refund? And if so, how do I get that? That's still a bit of an unknown. The other unknown is what's going to happen going forward. And we have some indications on what that looks like, but maybe we could go through each of those and discuss what some of those unknowns are. So the first part of how long will these IEEPA tariffs continue to be collected? And we didn't know that over the weekend, but we did hear that they will no longer be collected on goods entering into consumption or withdrawn from warehouse for consumption on or after 12 a.m. Eastern on February 24th, 2026. So at that point is when the IEEPA tariffs will no longer be imposed and will no longer be in effect. So that's one clarification that we didn't have on Friday when this announcement was made is how long, but it looks like as of 12 a.m. Eastern on the 24th of February is when they will no longer be imposed. And that's the first unknown. The second unknown that we mentioned is, well, can I get money back on the tariffs and the duties that I paid that were tied to IEEPA? And at this point, the answer is we're not sure. We don't know. And we don't know what that process is. There are a lot of trade attorneys who are much smarter and more experienced in this specific area than I am. And a lot of them have suggested that rather than filing a protest, that importers join or file a lawsuit in the Court of International Trade in order to try to get a refund on tariffs and duties that were paid associated with these IEEPA tariffs. So again, a lot of that is unknown, but some of the guidance we've heard from trade attorneys is that that's going to be the best path forward rather than filing a protest. Now, how long it will take for it to be determined if refunds will be made and which court will be determining who will do that, we're not certain at this point.
Yeah. Is anything certain at this point?
Far from.
So I'm reading the CSMS messages. And the latest one said that obviously IEEPA under the following presidential actions, including all modifications and amendments, will no longer be in effect. Right, blah, blah, blah. And then it says, be collected for goods entered or withdrawn from warehouses for consumption on or after 12 a.m. Eastern time on February 20th. So February 24th is tomorrow. Today is February 23rd. So would these tariffs, are they still in place?
On February 23rd, yes. So goods being imported today or withdrawn from a warehouse and used for consumption, yes, these tariffs are still in place today.
So would you think that some importers are holding their goods?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure that they're trying to make any adjustments they can to minimize the impact of the tariffs that they have.
Saving.
Exactly. Now, one thing that we talked about is getting a refund on all tariffs or duties that were paid associated with the IEEPA tariffs that have now been
Yeah.
avoided, at least going forward. Again, there's uncertainty as to how to collect refunds for all of those tariffs were paid. But one thing that we help clients with is file duty drawback claims.
Right. Let's get to that.
Yeah, and the reason why I think this is important is it ties to the third unknown is what's going to happen going forward. Now, on Friday, President Trump announced a 10% global tariff on top of all existing non-IEEPA tariffs. And again, the clarification on what that means exactly, we're not certain. And then on Saturday, he increased that from a 10% rate to a 15% rate. And he did this under the Section 122, which gives the executive branch, it gives the president, this is the Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act, which gives the president the authority to impose a tariff for up to 150 days. And what it feels like is that he's putting this in place as a bit of a bridge between something that he can do now and something that he can do that will be more enduring or longer lasting than this 150 days. So we do not anticipate that this administration is going to just run it out for 150 days. They're going to use the 150 days to figure out what a longer term solution is to continue to impose tariffs, whether that's working through Congress to pass legislation that imposes these tariffs, or another measure that allows them to have longer lasting tariffs in place. So the reason why this is important is because with all this uncertainty around what can I do to get refunds on tariffs that I've already paid, one thing that we help our clients with, the thing we help our clients with, is filing duty drawback claims. These are refunds of tariffs or duties that are paid on products that are imported into the United States that are later exported from the United States or destroyed.
Which sorry to interrupt, but this is something that all businesses can do already, right? This is not just because of the tariffs. This has always been kind of in place.
Yes, exactly. And by always, meaning going back nearly 250 years that they've been in place, and over the last 10 years have become increasingly popular and common, especially with the increasing tariff rates that we've
Yeah.
seen during that time period. Now, in regards to the IEEPA tariffs, again, some of this uncertainty comes from the fentanyl tariffs. Those were not eligible for duty drawback. That was explicitly called out in the executive orders that went out a year ago saying these tariffs are not eligible for duty drawback. But the reciprocal tariffs were eligible for duty drawback. So again, this difference between why certain tariffs were eligible and certain tariffs were not. It's the same thing with the 232 tariffs that were introduced over 6 years ago, and those were not eligible for duty drawback, and the Section 301 tariffs are eligible for duty drawback. So again, some inconsistency, and we'll see what happens with these Section 122 tariffs if there's additional clarification made. What we've seen in the past is that those tariffs that are ineligible for duty drawback are explicitly called out as being ineligible for duty drawback. So I would expect that if we don't hear any of that direct call out excluding duty drawback, that these Section 122 tariffs would be eligible to file claims, duty drawback claims.
Yeah. But the duty drawback, I just have to clarify, the duty drawback would be still separate from the refund that you can gain from the tariffs, correct?
Good question. Good question. So this is where an importer that is exporting a lot of those products or items, they would be able to file for a duty drawback, which is a refund. But let's say you're an importer that is bringing products in the United States. They're all being sold within the United States. There isn't drawback potential. And so an importer in that situation would want to make sure that they are finding a way to pursue a potential refund on these IEEPA tariffs. Again, we don't
Yeah.
know if they're even eligible, but you can't double dip is what we would say. You can't file a duty drawback claim on your goods or products that leave the country and then get them refunded again. And so we've worked with clients that have been filing drawback claims on imported goods that had these IEEPA tariffs on them. What we would have to do in that situation, if they're able to get a refund on all imported items, not just those that are exported from the United States, then they would have to refund that duty drawback payment and then collect the entire payment. They can't collect it twice.
Yeah. And that makes sense. Now, talking about the refunds, I know there's a lot of people that have said you should have already filed this months ago to make sure that you're being accounted for. Importers that have not done that, that have said, I'm just going to ride it out to the end. And then once they say, yes, you can get your refund, can those importers get their refund, or can those companies get their refunds?
Great question. So we don't even know, first of all, if refunds are available and what that process is to go about getting the refunds. A lot of importers have taken the approach of it's worth the filing fee to be part of this lawsuit. I mean, it's not
Yes.
free, but we're talking a few $1,000s that it could be to work with a trade attorney to file a lawsuit in the court of international trade, knowing that they've paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in import duties. And so a lot of importers have made this bet already.
Yeah.
Well, it's worth it for me to file a protest, is one approach some took. Some also took the approach of I want to join or participate in this lawsuit, an existing lawsuit, or file my own lawsuit. And so
Right.
again, I'm not an attorney or in a position to provide legal advice, but that's the decision that a lot of these importers have taken. Is it's worth it for me to make that initial investment in a lawsuit so that I can maximize the likelihood of receiving a refund. Again,
Right.
some of the speculation has been, well, if you were part of a lawsuit before the Supreme Court ruled, then only then are you eligible. And we just
Right.
don't know. That hasn't been made clear. And we expect that to we hope to get more clarification on that in the coming weeks, if not months, as to what that looks like.
Yeah, again, and it's a tricky period because, well, the CBP is going to stop assessing or stop, taking in these tariffs tomorrow. But then today, that's such a loop because the Supreme Court already said this is unlawful. This is not okay. So why are companies still paying these tariffs today? It's just sad that these companies have to do that because there's companies that truly lost, business out of it and over something that shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Yeah, that's according to the Supreme Court. That was their determination. So again, we'll see. Now, we don't know exactly the volume that was collected, but for through the IEEPA tariffs, but estimates are over $100 billion
Billion, right?
in collections from the United States government.
Yeah,
The
I want.
ability to even repay that comes into question in terms of the feasibility of this. Now, if the court rules that it has to, then
I want to ask one more question. So you touched on duty drawback. Obviously, that's your specialty. For businesses without a drawback program, does it make sense to move forward now and reclaim that duty drawback, or where do they start?
great question. So our answer is going to be yes, because
Mhm.
again, we expect additional tariffs to be put in place going forward. And we expect the Trump administration to find more permanent ways to implement this. You heard a lot of that in the president's remarks on Friday. A lot of, I'd say, the vigor for figuring out a longer term and potentially more costly tariff program, in his words, that
Yeah.
would be bring in more revenues to the United States, longer term solution that they would be working to implement. So we absolutely advise our clients to put a drawback program in place that would help them not only with previously paid duties and tariffs, but going forward. One thing that is really powerful about a drawback program is that it's a tariff mitigation strategy that allows you to go back retroactively and collect refunds. There's a lot of other tariff mitigation strategies like free trade zones or direct sourcing or changing where you're sourcing from that can minimize tariffs, but duty drawback is one that allows you to make changes or get refunds going back historically rather than just on a go forward basis. So that's one reason why duty drawback programs can be really useful for importers. The other reason why we encourage clients to continue moving forward in establishing a drawback program is because it can take time. It can take time not just to get the program set up, but to get approved by customs. And what that means is you can't collect the refund until your program has been approved by customs. That's something that we work with our clients to develop and implement. And because it takes time, we want to make sure that our clients are at the front of the line in that approval process so that when tariffs continue to change and be implemented, they're able to not just file drawback claims, but to collect the refunds from the government.
Yeah. Well, I think that sounds hopeful. I think, yeah, for importers, if you are able to, you should definitely still go for it, as you just said and explained. And we're still waiting for certain answers from the Supreme Court, not really from the Supreme Court, just in general from the top, right? And hopefully we'll get that coming the next few weeks. I don't know. You said months, and that scares me because doing business in this kind of limbo, I mean, I couldn't imagine. That just sounds terrible. And it sounds like you're throwing your money out for something that you don't even know, you have to pay, especially if these 15% come in place. I don't know when they will come in place. I don't think they have shared that, right?
Good question. My understanding was that it went into order almost
Already.
immediately.
Okay, so on top of what you're still paying, because you're still paying IEEPA today. So if you're paying IEEPA today plus the 15%, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of this it comes down to maximizing option value. Again, some importers said, yeah, we're going to file a lawsuit before we even hear from the Supreme Court because we want to maximize our option value in terms of
Yeah.
being able to get a refund. We view a drawback program as does it make sense to continue to develop a program or whatever? That again maximizes option value. It's not the cost of establishing a drawback program is some time, but there's minimal filing fees with customs to submit a privileges application to receive drawback funds. And so it's a time investment, but doing that can again set importers up for future success to make sure that they're able to collect on those products that come in and later leave the country.
I guess this is the only outlook that we have in the current state that we're in. I want to thank you so much for coming on and laying out the field, giving better details to what importers can do now. And it sounds a little bit hopeful. Obviously, it's stressful and very uncertain, but hopefully we'll get more details and more clarity within the next coming weeks. I hope you have a not so stressful day. I know that's probably not possible in this situation at the moment. And if you're listening, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. Next week, we'll be back with hopefully more updates. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much, Scott. And I hope to see you back soon.
Thank you, Annik. As you mentioned, it certainly is a stressful time, but especially for importers. And so that's where we're here to try to help them work through all these challenges that they're going through. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.